All right, good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to week 15 of government. We're going to be going over module 5, lesson 1 this week. So we're going to start the notebook today, and then we'll be finishing it on our second day of this week, and then reviewing for the quiz, right? I'll have the review sheet for you, okay? We're going to be looking at international relations this week. And I actually think the timing is, it's always relevant because there's always something going on in the world, but things are definitely there's quite a few international conflicts going on right now that we're involved in, that we're indirectly involved in, and stuff. So this topic definitely hits not only historically with importance, but modern day on things that we're involved in, whether we're looking at the conflict in Ukraine that we've been indirectly involved in, for the last over a year and stuff. And then more recently, right, we have Israel, Palestine, Israel, Gaza and stuff. So fighting against Hamas and stuff. So that is something that we've been indirectly involved in and stuff. So we're going to talk about why is it that the United States gets involved and the historical reasoning for that in the past, how we stayed out of conflicts, what that led to, and then why in the last 75 years or so, we've taken more of a proactive approach instead of a reactive approach to international conflict. I think it's easy when we're young to be like, that's halfway around the world. We shouldn't be involved in that. And there's definitely sometimes that maybe we shouldn't be, okay? But then there's also another side of the coin of kind of saying, but should we? Are we maybe trying to keep it from getting out of hand, from growing? Because if we look at history, World War I, World War II, how those happened were people staying out of it, and then those conflicts spread, and before you know it, you have to. So there's kind of theories on both sides, and we'll talk about some of that historical reasoning and then policies and why we try to be more proactive than reactive that we've historically done. We're going to spend some time today. I'm just going to quickly kind of review. We did this last week. So if you want a more thorough review of the civic exam, go back to week 14, the day 1. Right, I spent the entire lesson just on the civics exam, but I'm going to go back over that just a little bit today because Module 5, Lesson 1, notebook and quiz, those are due on Monday, and then the civics exam. Nothing new is assigned next week. Next week, right, is an easy week, right? We have Monday, Tuesday, and then it's Thanksgiving, so we're only meeting those 2 days. So Tuesday when we meet, it'll literally just be catch-up day and taking the civics exam if you need to, okay? So that'll be the focus. There'll be nothing new for you to do. So I want to spend a couple minutes talking about the civics exam, and then we will get going on our notebook, okay? So if we go to modules, wait for this to load. Okay, week 15, the lesson and recording page, right? This is where you can find the playback. So if you're new to class, pay attention to this. So if you ever miss class or if you need to go back and review something from class, this is where I put all the documents I give you in class. So here's the PowerPoint for the civics exam review. And so just to repeat, let's go over the civics exam, okay? So we talked about differences, we talked about that, okay? And then we talked about the exam. So it's located between Module 3 and Module 5. The civics exam is required to graduate. So this isn't just NVLA, this is a state standard, okay? It's not like the ACT or SAT, you don't have to go anywhere, you just take it online. It's not that difficult, and what I mean by that is if you've been paying attention, it shouldn't be that bad. U.S. history and government, it's definitely U.S. history and government questions. It's 50 questions and it's 45 minutes timed. Now, you need to get a 35 out of 50 to pass it. And what I mean by that is to meet the state standard that you took it and you passed it for graduation, okay? It is for a grade also in this class. So this is a real opportunity to summative-wise get a good grade, boost your grade up, okay? If you take it and let's say that you get a 30 out of 50, yes, you get that grade in the grade book, but you didn't pass it for graduation. So you need to keep retaking it until you get minimum that 35 out of 50. Now, if you get that 35 out of 50 and you want to get a better score, go for it. Because again, that will have a positive impact on your grade in this class, right? Since it's a summative grade. There's lots of reviews, so I'll go over those really quick, and you get unlimited attempts, okay? This is open till December 11th, so till the last day of the semester, the last day for any work to be submitted for the semester. For the quarter, sorry, for quarter 2, but end of semester 1. So you definitely have some time, but it's technically, we're dedicating next week to making sure if you haven't already, take it, get it out of the way, because obviously when we come back from Thanksgiving, we're going to be working and then prepping for finals, right? Prepping, or not finals, midterms, sorry, midterms. So some of the review material. Okay, so there's the civics questions. They're like flashcards, you know, it's up. There's the Quizlet flashcards. Any of these are really great. So let's just take a look at a couple of these. So the civics questions, this is more kind of just oral review. So it'll give you the question. Sorry, my computer's being really slow today. It's taking a minute to load. There we go. Okay. So it'll give you a question. All right. And you just kind of off the top of your head. Okay. So what's the Emancipation Proclamation? All right. Show answer. So this was referring to basically the lead up to the 13th Amendment, which is the ending of slavery. So freeing of slaves from the Confederacy. This is during the Civil War in the 1860s, right? The North and South, and making it federal law or a declaration, right? That slavery was no longer going to be allowed. Okay, slavery was no longer. So if you guess something around slavery or ending slavery, you could say I got it right, or if not, then you got it wrong. What do we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? So remember that was the Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights, got it right, got it wrong. So you just do this for questions, great way to review. Let's take a look at another one. And again, I did these in more detail in last week's video. So if you want to do a more complete review, you can go back and look at that. The Quizlet flashcards are pretty cool. So we'll take a look at this really quick. So time for review, just scroll down. Where'd they go? Okay, so what is supreme law of the land? The Constitution, and you just keep going through. Okay, what does the Constitution do? So it gives us the foundation, right, for our laws and structure of our government. Protects our basic rights. The idea of self-government is done in 3 words in the Constitution. So that's we the people. We the people. So you just keep clicking through. So it's another great option for review. Let's take a look at another one. So the U.S. citizen flashcards, similar to the Quizlet ones, there's just more of them. So there's like 100. So you scroll down, and what is supreme law of the land? So that would be Constitution. Next, what does the Constitution do? Protects our rights. The first 3 words. So again, there's some repetition. We the people. These are probably better because there's more of them. There's like 100. What is an amendment? So remember, that's a change to the Constitution. So like the Bill of Rights, there's been 27 amendments to the Constitution, changes to the Constitution. What do we call the first 10? All right, somebody show me they've been paying attention. Put it in the chat or unmute. What do we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? I just went over this, and we've talked about this a bunch this year already. Anybody? 3 words. Come on, come on. What are the first 10? Very good, Julie. Very good. Yes. Okay, Bill of Rights. Very good. So this is a great way to review. Okay. What is one right or freedom in the First Amendment? So that would be like speech, religion, protest, assembly. There's a bunch that are in that First Amendment, right? Basically ways we can express ourselves. How many amendments have there been? I just said this. How many amendments have there been to the Constitution? Anybody in the chat? Or you can unmute. Very good, Julian. Yes, 27. Okay, and that was on a previous quiz. So a lot of this should be repetitive of things we've gone over and done. And so if you've kind of forgotten or something, it's a great way to review. Here is another one. This is probably my favorite, the civics practice test. So here's the link. And so this is literally, it's 20 questions. And if you can take this and get it like an 18 out of 20 or better, then I would say you're ready to go take it. Now you can always take the civics exam, see how you do, and then go back and review and take it again. But this is because these are literally pulled from a previous civics exam. So this is a really, really good way to review. So who was president during the Great Depression and World War II? Okay, so that was Franklin Roosevelt. It's kind of more of a U.S. history question. Name one state that borders Canada. All right, so South Dakota, Maine, Rhode Island, or Oregon. Anybody? Who knows their U.S. geography? I'll give you hints. Not Oregon. Okay, we got Maine. Very good. Very good. Okay, so it gives you the 13 states that border. So Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio. So it gives you, and what I like about this one too is that if you get it wrong, it also tells you why and what the correct answer is. Or if you get it right, then it explains it. What is supreme law of the land? That's the Constitution. What did the Emancipation Proclamation do? All right, we just went over this. A, B, C, or D? United States independence, women the right to vote, end of World War I, or freed slaves in most southern states. What did the, come on folks, A, B, C, or D? Quickly, quickly. I'll give you a hint, Civil War. Let's vote, people. Come on, A, B, C, or D. Emancipation Proclamation, Civil War, 1860s. Abraham Lincoln. 13th, 14th Amendment. Yes, D, right? Freeing of slaves. Good. Okay. So this is a great thing to go through. So that's just another one to consider. And then the civics exam flashcards, if you're wanting to make some notes to use, you can use notes and stuff. The civics exam flashcards, it's a PDF. So you can download it or you can kind of pull from it, make your own. It is quite a few pages. So if you're going to print it, that's like 60 pages. It's quite a bit. So I wouldn't necessarily do that, but that's another review tool or if you want to make notes. Okay. So before we get started, remember 50 questions, 45 minutes. You can take it multiple times. It's due on Monday next week, but it's open till the 11th. So if you're busy this week, you could take it next Tuesday. Literally, I'm going to give you time in class. Okay. If you need to. And minimum score 35 out of 50. So if you take it and get less than that, you need to retake it. You got to get that 70% and stuff in order to meet the graduation requirement. Okay. And then really quick, where you find it. So there's the PowerPoint for that. There's our review sheet for the quiz this week. List of what is past due and when it closes. So the project is closing this Friday. So if you have a low grade, that's a really good way to get up your grade. Also the Module 3 assessment. Those are the two big things that would bring up your grade. But Module 3 Lesson 2, that will close this Friday. And then Module 3 Lesson 3 the following Friday. And then the assessment after that. All right. And this is always, again, where you find those playbacks. So let me point out where the civics exam is, and then we're going to start Module 5. So the civics exam is right there between Module 3 and Module 5, okay? So it's right there between those two, Module 3 and Module 5. And then this review page right here has all the same links that I just went over on that PowerPoint. So those same links, and again, tells you can take it as many times as you need. These are great review tools. And you click on the next one, and then there's where you can take it. Okay, any questions on the civics exam? Again, we did spend some time last week. We spent a whole class period talking about this. And then I am going to give you time next Tuesday. All right, thank you, Melanie. Okay, so get this done. Not only is this definitely going to help your grade for second semester or second quarter doing well and stuff like that. Again, it's a lot of review questions, things we've gone over. You can take it as many times as you need, but it is required to graduate. So this is not one where it's like, I don't care. Like whether, even if you fail this class and you got to retake this semester, you have to do the civics exam. Like this is required to graduate. So might as well get it done, get it out of the way. All right. Let's go. And we're going to start Module 5. Okay. We're going to start Module 5. So Module 5 is all about international relations and global connections, okay? And so this week, we're really going to be focusing on international relations. So go ahead and click on the first tab. Okay, it gives us the learning intention. So examine contemporary issues at the national global level when critiquing the use of conflict and diplomacy in international relations. And again, this lesson is always relevant in that there's always something going on globally. There's always something going on globally. And now with social media and technology and stuff, our connections to it, our involvement has grown, right? Because people often use social media platforms to express their support or their critique, right, of an international conflict or something we're involved in. The two big ones that we're probably most involved in right now or that have been talked about the most on social media, put them in the chat. What are the two big ones that, and we're not here to debate it. We're here to just go over US history and then why we get involved. But what are the two big ones that we are involved in right now? I mentioned in the beginning of class. What are the two big international conflicts? One's happened more recently, starting in October, and then one's been going on for over a year. Anybody? Yes, Ukraine. So Russia and Ukraine. Okay, we've been giving aid to Ukraine. And yes, the more recent, right, Palestine versus Israel. Okay, and so in that conflict. So those are two major conflicts. We're involved in other ones, but those are the big ones that have been in the news and that people you definitely see on social media. So looking at why are we involved in those, and wherever you land on those issues or how you feel about Ukraine or how you feel about Israel or Palestine, it's stuff like that. Understanding why the US gets involved doesn't always necessarily mean you have to agree with our involvement in something, or if you do agree, but understanding the history and the theory of why we try to take a more proactive approach in international conflicts versus a passive approach, okay? Because in the past, we have been passive, and there have been really severe consequences to that. Now, it doesn't mean that every international conflict would lead to a world war, but we had 2 world wars within 20 years. Like world wars, not just us at war, like world wars, you know? And I don't think you and I realize we haven't lived through a world war. How, I mean, on another level that is. And that was almost 100 years ago, right? 80 years ago. World War I was 100 years ago. World War II was about 80 years ago. Or 90 years ago, and it started in 1935. So think they didn't have nuclear weapons yet, you know? So think the technology we have today, the weapons we have today, and the idea of the world going to war. So the big lesson we're going to look at is why have we since World War II been more proactively involved, meaning upfront in smaller conflicts, hoping to keep them more local so that they don't spread, if you imagine kind of like a wildfire, because most countries have treaties, right? And depending which side you're on, it's stuff, if people phone in their treaties, it becomes a domino effect and those wars spread. So trying to keep that from happening and stuff is usually the goal. So we're going to take a look at that and the history of that and how after World War II, we've taken a different approach. Okay, we're going to open up our notebook. So go ahead and click on the link. Open it up. Just realize I don't have mine open right now. So let me, while you get that open, let me get mine open. Get that open, rename it, save it to your Google Drive, right? And make it shareable so that when you submit the notebook, I'll be able to open it. Okay, go ahead and give me a thumbs up once you have your notebook open. Notebook open, you saved it to your Google Drive and you made it shareable. So just real quick to review, remember you make it shareable by go to share and anyone with the link. Indeed, yes. Yes. It's funny, every year when this lesson comes up, I'm like, this is very relevant. And it never fails to be relevant because there's always a conflict somewhere. There just is. There's always a conflict somewhere. Unfortunately, human nature and differences and the want for power and stuff like that never ends, you know, and stuff. So it really each year when I go over this lesson, it's just what is the current, you know, and last year I talked about Ukraine because Ukraine started early last year and stuff, but it has continued. And now, you know, we see other heightened and obviously the most recent and on the news and current is Palestine versus Israel conflict. All right, let's get started. So we're going to go to next and let's find our key question here. Is the United States influential in international relationships? So that's the key question that we're discussing that we want to be able to answer after today and after Thursday, okay? And again, it's not always about, you don't have to agree with everything the US does, but are we influential? And I believe the evidence shows yes. On trade, economics, again, military support, we can often tip the scale or help one nation or another, depending on which side we're involved in. And there's lots of evidence of that. Ukraine would be a great example. If we had not aided Ukraine, Russia most definitely, and not just us, other European nations have also aided Ukraine. Russia would have successfully taken over Ukraine. Absolutely, they would have, and stuff. So there's definitely evidence to without backing and stuff, ways that conflicts would go. All right, so copy and paste. Go ahead and put that. So Dusty, just so you kind of get the trend, what I do is we kind of go over each question. We work through the notebook correlates with Canvas, and you complete the notebook as you go through Canvas. And that's one good thing about coming to class is we do most of the notebook in class together. Okay, let's go on and let's take a look at the key vocab. Okay, so humanitarian. So sometimes our involvement is in humanitarian aid or assistance and stuff. So about 10% of our foreign aid is devoted to this cause. This theory of kind of proactive involvement or front end involvement started with the Truman Doctrine, which was beginning of the Cold War. So immediately after World War II, we saw the Korean War, and then the Cold War, which was this international, right, communism versus anti-communism. So you would have learned about this last year, right, in US history. And the whole goal was to keep communism from spreading. So as nations were gaining their independence, they were very susceptible, they were very weak to being drawn into communism. And as we talked about, communism is a form of dictatorship. It absolutely is. And so our goal was to help countries not join communism, okay? So we offered financial aid to help countries build democracies or diplomatic governments and stay away from communism. And again, trying to not empower the USSR, the Soviet Union, which has fallen apart and lived on by Russia today. Okay, some other vocab. Subsequent, okay, so subsequent means, you know, kind of after or following. Deterrent. So our goal of getting involved more in the beginning and taking more of a proactive approach is our goal is hopefully to deter or to keep things from escalating. Okay, that is the goal. And the Cold War, we saw a lot of that where we were trying to deter World War III and the spread of communism. And a lot of our involvements today, for example, aiding Ukraine, is to keep Russia from extending. And once they invade Ukraine, who else would they invade? Our involvement in Israel-Palestine conflict is again to hopefully protect and secure Israel as a nation, but also keep that from escalating into a larger conflict. Because again, it's not just between Israel and Palestine, right? You see many nations around that have opinions and involvement and funding. And so to keep basically the Middle East from breaking out into war, all right, which would be catastrophic for both sides of that conflict. And for a lot of history, we've been isolated. We have tried to stay out of conflict. But what we've seen, unfortunately, is a lot of those conflicts reach us whether we want to or not. The oceans don't protect us, okay? People can cross the oceans and we end up getting involved, sometimes at a point like World War I, World War II, where the cost is really high. And so our goal is, how do we avoid those really painful, deadly wars if possible? Okay, so let's take a look at the vocab. I'll put this. All right, so humanitarian. So sometimes our involvement is humanitarian efforts, so bringing aid on, you know, medical, food, water, supplies, diplomacy, sometimes trying to act as a mediator in between. This practice of getting involved in conflicts that maybe don't directly seem like they relate to us, but you often can find a link. It stuff started with the Truman Doctrine, okay? The idea of trying to promote governments that were democratic societies, not dictatorships, okay? And supporting countries who promote human rights and fair and free elections, not oppressive governments that oppress people because of their gender, because of their race, because of their religion, because of their lifestyle, right? And stuff, that being the goal. So this started subsequently or afterwards or following World War II, all right, and the beginning of the Cold War, which a lot of people were afraid would lead to a World War III. And it very well could have. There were several times, you think back to US history, on the Vietnam War, the Korean War, on the Afghan War, on the Cuban Missile Crisis, were all tipping points that were local conflicts, but really represented the communist, anti-communist, and very well could have become a World War III. Very close sometimes, very scary. how close we came. So the goal is to deter or discourage full-out war. Okay, the goal in a lot of our involvements, whether you agree or not, the goal is to keep that conflict from spreading and involving us on a larger scale, or larger nations on a large, to keep it local and try to resolve it as much as possible. You might not always agree with our stance on something, but that is the goal, is to keep it from spreading beyond that region. A lot of our history, we have spent more in isolation. Prior to the Cold War, our philosophy was not my business, not my problem. And what we found was that even with that philosophy, it reached us. World War I, Germany intended to invade us. World War II, we were bombed in Pearl Harbor by Japan. So both wars we tried to stay out of, and we were drawn in. And hundreds of thousands in World War I and millions in World War II died. And that's just from our country. That's not even tallying what other countries lost. Any country is going to put their own self-interest first, as they should, right? How do countries survive? You have to put yourself first and considering others. So a lot of times our international involvement is self-protection, right? It's how can this impact us economically, militarily, diplomatically, and stuff. So it's often not a simple yes or no, should we be there? It's often very complicated, very, very complicated. Current examples of Ukraine, Palestine, and Israel, absolutely, where oftentimes there's many arguments, there's many sides and views and stuff like that, but looking at evidence, taking the situation, and again, how can we resolve and keep this from going larger than the current situation? Okay, give me a thumbs up once you have your vocab. Sometimes our goal is to minimize that threat and keep it from coming to the United States. And so we see that oftentimes in our involvement of, if we assist in a current conflict, that it could help indirectly then keep us from a larger conflict, or we might face the same threat. All right, we have about 5 minutes, so it's not quite enough for me to do number 3. Let me see, how do I want to do this? All right, let's go to the next page. I think what we'll do is we'll answer the question, and then I'll start class tomorrow. I had a video clip I wanted to show you. I'll start class tomorrow with the number 3 video clip, and then we'll keep going from there, okay? So number 3, if you go to the next page in Canvas, okay, is foreign policy. So there's 2 questions. How have historical events influenced the move from a primarily isolation theory to being, to being more of a world power and stuff? So after World War I and World War II, it was clear that we had to be involved, whether we liked it or not. The oceans didn't keep us from the threat. So the Cold War really kicked off our more proactive approach, being involved up front and combating the threat, than waiting and seeing what happens with the threat. So we really see after World War II that philosophy changed, because having 2 back-to-back wars within 20 years, you could say everyone in the world was traumatized, right? Like, how did this happen not once, but twice? How does this happen? And then we go right back into conflict and everybody's exhausted. And so, again, it's easy for our generation to not see the value of upfront interaction, but when you look at the history and what World War I, World War II cost us, and how close we were to losing, how close, and if you think back to, that's what I loved about world history, talking about we actually should have lost World War II. It was Germany's error that allowed the Allied powers to win. World War I, same thing. Germany's error, the Allied power, or the Axis powers' error. And so when you look at how close we were to losing and how different our world would be if we had lost those wars, it motivates you to say, we can't put our head in the sand. Now, it doesn't mean you have to agree with every conflict we're in. And sometimes even I'm critical of, like, do we really need to be involved in this conflict, or are we getting too involved, or what that looks like? But the idea that we just aren't involved, there is historical evidence to show that puts us at greater threat. Look at World War I and World War II. Look at those threats. So we're just not going to do anything oftentimes can actually put us at greater threat than trying to upfront combat that threat and minimize that threat. How do you think the United States should prioritize international issues? Our national security is the biggest issue. So the reason and the number one reason we get involved, and this is any country, every country has to look out for themselves, right? You want to look out for others, don't get me wrong. We want to help others, but you always, just like your family, right? You have to put your family first, and then others. If you're only worried about your neighbor, then maybe you can't pay your own bills. You know what I mean? That's just how you survive. So our national security. So a lot of times the way we'll evaluate, should we get involved in a threat or not is what is the likelihood of threat to us? What is the trickle effect that we could have? And the more we can have global stability or regional stability, we can indirectly be affected by that, right? It could be oil prices, it could be shipping, it could be trade. Again, military conflict, actually saving lives. So there's a lot of reasons that we get involved. Cybersecurity now, this was a thing that wasn't even a thing 50 years ago. Right now, it's cybersecurity. Russia has hacked us several times and compromised our banking systems and government systems and stuff like that. Look at CCSD, right? We were hacked, okay? But if we stick our head in the sand, it will find us. So right there, seeing what happened to CCSD, school shut down for 2 weeks, So the goal is to counter those threats as much as possible, because there are bad people out there and they're trying to do bad things, and maybe not directly at us today, but indirectly it could, and tomorrow it could be us. So the goal is to keep things from escalating as much as possible. All right, we're going to stop there for today. Tomorrow, I will start class and we'll finish talking about number 3. I have a good video on foreign policy, why we're involved, and then we're going to look at some of those specific plans and when we've gotten involved. Okay, we'll look at it during the Cold War, and we'll look at it after 9/11. Okay, after September 11th and stuff. So the Bush Doctrine. All right. Okay, so make sure you saved your notebook. We'll stop there today. We're going to pick up tomorrow. So make sure you saved your notebook, and we'll finish reviewing this question, and then we'll go into 4 and 8 in military presence, and we'll finish the notebook tomorrow. All right. Hope you have a wonderful day. All right. And I will see you on Thursday. You are free to go. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.